The chyron on CNN just about 15 minutes ago was U.S. officials, or words to the effect of, I don't remember verbatim, but U.S. officials are combing through data to determine the mental health of Vladimir Putin. Has he gone nuts? Or is this just, you know, expected behavior from somebody who for 20 years has been basically, you know, Lord God of an entire country? Let's ask somebody who really understands this stuff. I mean, none of this armchair psychoanalyst here from me and you, but let's ask a real professional, Dr. Justin Frank. He's a psychoanalyst and clinical professor at the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science at George Washington University. He's the author of Trump on the Couch and his previous books in the series, Obama on the Couch, Bush on the Couch. His Twitter handle is Justin Frank MD. And Dr. Frank, welcome back. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Putin walks like a weightlifter kind of thing. Like, you know, I'm a tough guy. He is kind of short. He was in East Germany for a long time. I'm wondering how much of this is compensation, or am I just in weird psychobabble land here?
Well, I don't think you're in weird psychobabble land because I have always learned a lot talking with you and enjoyed our interchanges. So that I would not see. And I do think you can think about compensatory behavior on his part. But I've had no contact with him, zero. I had no direct contact with Trump, but I read mountains of books, saw lots of tapes, listened to speeches, and spent a lot of time learning about him. So the reason I was able to write my 3 books was because in the West, we live in a free society that is largely transparent. Because the inner workings of Soviet politics and Russian politician politics and in the oligarchy system, there's very little transparency there. And when you add that to the language barrier, it's not really possible for anyone other than intelligence officers in the U.S. to form a psychological profile of somebody like Putin. In fact, in the introduction of my book on Trump, I said, I am sure this is not the first analytic study of Donald Trump, but unfortunately, I don't speak Russian. I wrote that in my introduction. So with that disclaimer, there's a lot of interesting articles about Putin, but most of the information that's really hardcore information is held by our intelligence people. People have written things about it. Vanity Fair's Emily Jane Fox wrote something the other day. There's lots of places we can look. So with that, I'm still an expert on the psychology of leadership, and I have a lot of knowledge about obviously leaders, and I've done a lot of observing about Putin in the last few weeks and months. So what I do know is real about him. And the first thing I wanted to say that's he shares with Trump in a way is that they're both germaphobes. They're both afraid of germs. And I think the reason why Putin sits so far away is not so much simply paranoia or being an autocrat who likes to bark orders. I think it's because he's afraid of getting COVID.
Makes sense.
And I really think that's real. And so I don't know that, but I think, you know, Trump is a germaphobe in a different way. The reason he likes McDonald's and all these fast food places partly is because the food comes already wrapped up and wrapped by machines and never touched by people. So he's the one who unwraps it. And that's a way of having fewer germs in his mind. So those are similar things, and both of them can lead to paranoia and paranoid aspects, because germophobia is part of a paranoid anxiety. So it's possible that Putin is paranoid, first of all, and that's what I think people are concerned about, because the problem with paranoid leaders is that they are irrational. They do strike out if they feel cornered, and they are unpredictable and therefore dangerous.
I have been suggesting on this program for several days that one of the things I think that our leaders and negotiators and Zelensky's negotiators in Belarus need to be sure to do is give Putin an out where he can at least save face. I mean, my sense of it is that this is the end of his leadership of Russia, that he's not going to survive this, although that may take a year or two to happen. But over the short term, you know, I remember cornering, I was telling a story yesterday, I remember cornering a mouse in my house in Montpelier, Vermont once, you know, trying to catch it with a laundry basket. And that mouse, when she got backed into literally a corner in a room, just reared up on her hind legs and was going to take me on. And I don't think that we want him to feel cornered. Now, I'm not saying we should give him any victories or blessings or you know, cave into him. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, just yesterday, I wrote a comment about Mighty Mouse. So that's pretty funny because of your experience, because I feel that in a way, Putin being short and Mighty Mouse being powerful, he can be a Mighty Mouse. Right. And I agree with you completely about having a way out. There has to be elbow room in any kind of confrontation, especially for a paranoid person and a paranoid leader, to save face, to save pride, to avoid humiliation. Because as you started out our interview today, you said you thought some of Putin's behavior was compensatory for feeling short and possibly inferior in some way, so this was compensatory. Well, if it is compensatory, which it could well be, then you certainly want to let him have a place where he can exit without feeling humiliated, right, since compensatory is for feeling humiliated. Now, there's some other things, though. The White House, I heard, just announced that they're going to have the State of the Union on a split screen in case there's some activity in Ukraine that we need to see. So that's an interesting change. So there's clearly an influence. I mean, he's very powerful, Putin, in that sense. And I think that I've been sort of toying with the thought that for a while that Trump was right, although for the wrong reasons. He said recently that he thinks if he were president, Putin wouldn't have gone into Ukraine. That's possible, but the reason is different. The reason is because Putin wouldn't need to go into Ukraine because Trump would be able to dismantle the United States from within.
Right, and Europe. I mean, you know, Trump was going after NATO and the EU, and in my opinion, the whole Brexit thing was part of trying to destroy the EU. Another question. Yes. An old dear friend of mine who has now passed away, his name was Armin Lehman. Armin and I worked together for years, literally in cities all over the world. And you know, he had a funny German accent, but I had no idea his past until long after we both retired from that business. That was back in the 80s. And he brought me a manuscript one day and said, in fact, made an appointment to bring me a manuscript and said, I want to tell you my story. When he was 16 years old in Berlin in 1945. He was impressed into the military, and he was the courier who brought Hitler the news that the war was over, that Hitler had lost. He stayed in that bunker for almost a week. He stood outside Hitler's door when Hitler committed suicide. And he told me about this, and he wrote a book about it. It's in print. You can find it on Amazon and things. And Armin's point to me was that Hitler at that point, number one, if he could have killed all Germans in Germany, he would have done it, because he blamed them all for the failure. They let him down. He didn't fail in anything. And number two, his only out was to take his own life. Are you concerned that at any point Mr. Putin might feel like he has no place to go, he's got no out, suicide is really his main option, but he's not in a bunker like Hitler was with a gun with one bullet in it. He's sitting with, enough nuclear weapons to end all life on Earth, and he could commit, like the spousal murder-suicide we had in Oregon a couple of days ago. Husband kills the wife and then kills himself. Could he take the world down? Is that something we should be concerned about?
I think it's something we need to think about, yes. I'm not sure about being concerned about it as a real imminent problem, but I do think that's why what you were saying about having him have elbow room and be able to leave with his pride intact is very important. I mean, I think that that Trump is more, that Putin, sorry, it's interesting, that Putin is more interested in revenge against the United States than he is about invading Ukraine in some way. I think he has wanted to, as you said, break up NATO, break up Europe, and he didn't need to worry about that since Trump was doing his bidding all this time until Trump didn't get reelected. And I think now he feels that it's very possible that he's entering Ukraine because he doesn't think Trump will get reelected in 2024. He doesn't have a chance, so he might as well go ahead and do the other thing he wants to do. That's possible. But what is interesting to me is that, well, this is all obviously very important, but one of the things that I've been thinking about, too, is how everybody here, a lot of people, at least pundits, have been saying that Putin sounds crazy talking about Nazis in Ukraine and talking about all these different things. And my experience on the inpatient units that I've worked have been that there's a whole kernel of wheat in every Wheaties flake, that he may be onto something when he talks about Nazis in Ukraine, but not so much about Nazis who were persecuting Jews in 1945, which is what most people think he was talking about. But what about the fact that lots of Russians who lived in Ukraine had a hard time speaking Ukrainian? And the Ukrainian government started making Ukrainian the language in their school system.
Right.
So it may be that the Ukrainians' nationalism led to Russians in the East feeling persecuted, and they felt they were equally as Ukrainian as everyone else. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But if that's a possibility, that may be where he saw the Ukrainians as persecutors.
Although we have English-only
Russian
language
people.
schools in the Southwest, and you've got only Spanish-speaking kids showing up. But anyhow,
Yes.
we're hitting a hard break here, so I can't push it any farther. Dr. Frank, thank you so much for dropping by. It's always insightful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Dr. Frank, you can follow him on Twitter. Justin Frank MD is the very best place to go. And